Hey everybody, welcome back to The Devout Route with Pastor Mick Veach. I am your host, as always, Michael Braden, and with me, as always, is my good friend, Mick Veach. How's it going?
It's going well. Good to be here, Michael. And this is a topic that I always am interested in, and I'm grateful that you and I can dive into it. Hopefully be an encouragement to people that are listening in today.
Yeah, and specifically what we're talking about today is kind of the current culture of the church. Like, what is going on in the church? Is the church inclining? Is it declining? Do we see a lot of new people coming in the church? Is it younger generations? Because we kind of hear different things all the time, where we hear, some people say, oh, Christianity is dead in America and no one is coming to faith. But then you have other articles and things we're talking about, younger generations like Gen Z and what the younger ones coming after them, that they're kind of coming back to a more purified version of the church, or more the early church, that there's that desire. So, I mean, we hear all kind of things back and forth. So we just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about that today and kind of see in our perspective and in our area, how do we view the church? What do we see going on? Is revival happening? Do we see many people that have lost are now coming to know the Lord? So, Mick, for you personally, where you're at as a pastor, what do you view the current status of the church? Do you feel like we're on the rise? Like, how do you see the church?
You're going to laugh at my answer, and the answer is yes and yes. Meaning the church is in decline, but there's also growth happening in a different way. There's a different metric, praise God. There's a different metric, whereas before it was only about attendance. And now we're seeing, I believe, the remnant becoming more and more. The middle ground is pretty much going away, because you can't stand in the middle. You're either in or you're not. And so, but if you're just talking statistically, is the church in decline? Yes, that's hard not to refute that. The church is in decline. But yet, like you just said in your introduction, is that even though it is inclined, we have some bright points of at least reports mainly on college campuses, where there's just been this spiritual hunger for Christ and truly having outpourings of the Holy Spirit in these various universities. Probably 10 or 12 that we could even name that's happened over the last couple of years. So that where that all takes us, and we don't know yet. So yeah, we are in decline. Yes, God is speaking to a younger generation. Both of those are true. The bigger issue is, how did we get here? Why are we here? All COVID did was just exasperate what already existed. We were able to cover it up. That we were a church that was limping along. We were a church that was about consumerism. We were a church about performance. We were a church about the organization being the end goal rather than the mission of Jesus. And all of those things came to light quickly. And I do believe, before we go on, to say that the church will survive. The church will win. That's 100% fact. Will it look the same? Will it be the same size? Probably not. Sometimes the biggest problem with the church is that we don't want to change, because for some of us, we lose positions, we lose finances, etc. So we're willing to hold on with everything to keep the thing going, and even though it may be not the proper way to do it. So I think it will change. The other thing as I relate to the church is that I don't think one size fits all, just like you and I have talked on many podcasts about individuals. I think it's the same way with the church. To say that there's only one model that will get the church healthy and growing, or that people have a tendency to do that. And I really have a hard time with that. Why? Because God's not limited to one model. He's way more creative. And I'm a big defender of, or a proponent of, throw the net out and allow God to have multiple ways he wants to do it, rather than say it's only one way. And I believe that's what will happen as it relates to seeing the church do the work that she needs to do in these last days, because I do believe we're in the last days as a part of that.
One of the things you brought up, which I completely agree with, is the aspect of the impact that COVID had in ministry. And one area where we do see decline, which we admitted to, is in regards to pastors. Yeah. And we know that really exacerbated through COVID. So just talk a little bit of that, what you've seen pastorally in the Big C Church in regards to kind of leaving sense of calling, or
there's a couple of things that I think are going on here. I think the first thing, there's a spiritual thing happening, and the spiritual thing is to keep people from moving forward to full-time ministry, which then impacts the church, right? So if we can keep people even interested because the view of pastors has decreased. There's a most recent poll that said only 27% of Americans have found pastors in a favorable light. That's to me, that's spiritual, right? That doesn't even make any sense. Makes no sense to me. It's totally spiritual, right? That means there's a society that's hostile towards the church, which means it's only a matter of time when the infrastructures will, what Scriptures talks about, the persecution that's all around the world will be upon us. When, I don't know. So I think it's spiritual. I think also the second thing is that we're more material. We want to make money. So I don't want to go into ministry. I know that if I go into ministry, I'm going to struggle, and it will be harder for me because I can't make the big bucks like I can in the marketplace, which is a whole nother discussion, but that is impacting the ministry. And thirdly, probably about 20 some years ago, we stopped calling people into ministry. I'm old enough as that when I was younger, everybody was called into ministry all the time. There was a call from camps to conferences to even local churches, the openness to call to be a pastor or a missionary. Well, I think we're seeing a most recent trend that's changing in the last couple of years, but up to that point, we stopped, and now we basically lost a farm system. We don't have a feeder system to do that. And so the average age of the senior pastor is 58 years of age, where several years ago it was 44. What does that say to us? We're aging out.
Yeah.
So I don't know where God's doing with all of it, meaning as it relates to the pastor, is he going to, we're going to have fewer churches and then just stronger churches, or I don't know the answer to all that, but I think that it's something that we are beginning to readdress about the pastors. But if we don't have that role, which Scriptures clearly defines as a role, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's interesting, like you were saying, how many of the pastors where, it's different aspects, where a lot of them it is financially. And it's like, well, if I had this call in my life, then, God would provide for us. And yet we're not seeing that. So, but then on the other end, it is that, just that, as we saw, especially through COVID, just that emotional pressure. There's that spiritual oppression that they feel. It's just constant attacks. And like you were saying, if you're in a culture where the majority is against your position anyway, it's like, where are you getting the edification from? Yeah. Where are you getting the support from?
Yeah.
And I think that plays a big role into it also, why we've seen so many of them decline, where it's like, I'd rather just go the worldly route and, kind of give up on this calling.
Well, we've shot ourselves in the foot, aside from the pastor thing, where for many years we have created a culture in the church that it's a consumer mentality. Simply like going to a buffet meal. It's crazy, like when that came in, because then the churches are fighting over having the best this or the best that, best youth ministry, the best children's ministry, the best preacher, the best music, the best care groups, the best facility. And if we can provide that, then we can steal you from the other church, see people get saved. And people are just going from church to church. But that consumer mentality has a dire consequence. Number one, we are the church is only seen as a commodity. The pastor is only seen as a commodity. I pay my tip to get a service, just like going to a movie. And that's a dangerous thing. And when we have a consumer mentality, then it's all about me. It's about what you can provide for me. And it's not about me being called and to serve. And if we get to that's where we are, then the church is going to be in decline, because we're never going to be able to live up to that. And then you've got the church that has liberalized, walked away from Scripture, the mainliners to be exact, to accommodate modern ideology, that if you look at their growth, there is no growth. By accommodating, they're not growing. The mainline church has been in decline, regardless of their shift over the last 50 years theologically. It hasn't helped them, it's hurt them, right? They're a dying church, worse than the evangelical church, right? So I think that this consumerism has been a huge piece of the whole puzzle. And I think it came out of this whole seeker-sensitive mentality. It came out of the Willow Creek model in the early 90s, maybe the late 80s. And there was something good from it, but it went too far. The good piece of the seeker-sensitive for the church was, let's let everybody feel welcome. And let's not have insider language. Perfect. I 100% agree with that. Everybody's welcome. We're going to make it so everybody can understand what's going on. But we just took that way too far. We're not going to make anybody feel uncomfortable. We're not even going to we're not even going to read the Bible. We're just going to do a topic to try to lure you in, and then have a Bible study later. We're never going to have prayer in church. We took away the altars. It became a performance, right? We have some cool. We'll even have the Beatles up on stage, play Beatles music. I mean, so we no longer worship. I mean, that's the extreme of where that took us. And a lot of churches were doing it, all saying they're trying to win people to Jesus. And I think it's a horrible, horrible way to do that. Like, that's absurd. Like, be real with people. This is who we are. Love them. Don't be unapologetic who we are. And they're adults. I think people like that better than this is who we are. And then find out, and many churches have found that out. There's a mega church on the other side of the state that have really struggled since COVID or right before COVID, because when we went through the whole LGBTQ, the racism, the COVID, they realized their people hadn't been discipled at all, and they realized most of them didn't believe the Bible. Most of them were totally, and this is an evangelical church, right? So that's the result of consumerism. So I don't want to hang everything on that, but I think that's played a bigger role than we ever. It had some good things to it, but we took it way too far.
Yeah, and I think you talked about going on those extremes and, being too seeker-friendly, and that we made ourselves so much like the world, where then that same mentality came in, right? That's where you get the buffet style, where just like the world, I just get what accommodates me, and if I'm not a fan of it or it doesn't meet my needs, I just move on to the next one. Yeah. And we do that with churches. And I think a lot of that feeds into, and we'll probably do a more in-depth topic of this down the road, but why we've seen kind of like the pastoral authority has diminished is because it's kind of like, in a sense, well, what do I need you guys for? Yeah. Right? It's like, it's all about me. There's nothing special. There's no headship authority. There's not, right? It's all, we're all on the same level.
Well, that's where online has taken us. Like, church is an appendage. It's only if it's convenient. I can just do online. Here's my thought about online. Online I have a love-hate relationship with it. I love what it does. We can reach the areas of the world that need to have some cool preaching and inspiration. I love the fact that it can serve our people if they're sick or out and about. But I totally stand against if you're driving distance from your local church and you just decide you're not going anymore and it's convenient. Here's the long-term response to that. You won't be. Why would you keep watching your church? Because you no longer have a relationship with them the longer you're gone. There's always better preachers out there. So now it does become all about you. Now you're not even doing church. It's just, it's another one of your steps to improve yourself. So I work out and I do yoga and I have this outreach and I have that outreach, not outreach, but I have this class and I have that class and I watch church online. That's not the church, but that's where we put it.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's key too, and we've seen that especially post-COVID, where initially it was fear, right? And there's fear of COVID and not want to engage, but then it got comfortable. And it's like, well, now it's just convenient.
I mean, and who are we? I mean, we still, Carrie, who's here with us, but I think we're between 300 plus every week that view us online, and that's my love-hate relationship.
No, it's that tension. You're just gonna be like, oh, we're done doing online.
Yeah,
and it's like 300.
But it impacts. It's impacting the church. If that's all you do, the point is, when push comes to shove and all hell breaks loose, online's going to do squat for you.
Right.
Right. It will not do anything for you at that point if you do not have relationships. Church is about relationships. That's what church is about. You worship Christ together, right? Could I worship Christ by myself? Yeah. But you were never intended to worship Christ by yourself indefinitely. That's the fault. That's the individualism of America, right? Not realize community is humongous in our development and our growth and everything else in between. So we need to and I've been encouraged most recent days that it feels like some of our Christian liberal arts universities that are providing leaders for the church, they were even going down this road of liberalism and walking away from the Bible. At least in our denomination, they are moved back to, this is who we are. We believe the Word of God is the infallible, inerrant, literally the Word of God. And to me, that was incredibly important.
So, going in that vein of, you have the COVID approach, you see other outside factors when it comes to the pastoral role. What would you say to pastors who are in that space right now, that they feel like the church is in decline, my position feels meaningless, is this what God's called me to do? I can't afford, I can't take care of my family. Like, what would you say to those that came to say, like, advice, or I need someone to lift me up in this season?
That's a good question, Michael. I'd say first to them, if you're listening on the podcast, you got to step back and say, has God called me here? That's the first one. If he's called me, you have to have that resolve. And once you have that resolve, God has called me, then the second thing is you have to ask the question, and it is in your secret place, what has he called me to do? What is the mission he's given me? And you must be able to articulate it clearly. What is it he wants me to do with this church, to lead this church? If you can't answer that question, you're in trouble. It's the same for all of us. It just looks different in each church, in each culture, or our many cultures in the U.S. But what's he called you to do? And then thirdly, who's he called you to do it with? You can't do it by yourself. So I would say to you, that's what you need to do. Now, if you've already done all three of those and you're finding conflict and decline and everything else, then I would encourage you to seek mentors to say, how much of that is you? How much of that is a dysfunctional church? How much is that of your ability to navigate through? Are you the cap on that church, or is there people that can help you to navigate through why you're stuck as a church, right? As it relates, that's my major advice. But as it relates to the financial piece, that's a very complex question because everybody's situation is different. So depending on what their situation is, will be determined on to what they can and cannot do concerning that. I will say that it appears that we're going back to, I think in past podcasts we've talked about it, to bivocational.
Yeah, I definitely see that.
It's becoming more normal, especially in the smaller churches. They simply can't afford. They can't the pastor has to have some subsidy. It's just so expensive. I was talking to the younger 30-some couples, like most of them have to have both people work. I think it's right now, at least in the Midwest, it's like $80,000 just to make men's meat.
Yeah,
right.
If
you have kids,
are high, yeah.
If you just have kids, $80,000. And I think the average pastor, when we're talking about money, I think across the board makes $60,000.
Well, yeah, I just saw something the other day. They were saying, just in daycare purposes, to have a 2-year-old and an infant, it's like $24,000 a year on average.
Yeah.
So just factor that in, and like you need both parents to work.
One parent has to work enough that they make more than $24,000 that would make it suffice, because they're minus 24. Then what kind of money they want?
Yeah.
Now, at the end of the day, that's why I'm saying the complexity. If you're in debt, or you've not been wise with your money, then that you have the responsibility to get taken care of, and that may cancel you out of ministry, depending on the decisions you made. But if you've lived simplistically and you're not in debt, it gives you much more freedom to know. And then what you choose, you ask the Lord, you seek mentors, is what is the level God's called us to live? You don't have to live at the level what society tells you. Your kids don't have to do everything that everybody tells you your kids have to do. So you have to make those decisions in ministry. You may look like, and it may seem like at first sacrifices, but it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
Everybody thought my kids growing up overseas they sacrificed so much. My kids, oh my word, they experienced the world.
They had a great time. Right?
Way more fuller experience than just being in a small town with, never having that. So,
yeah.
And it wasn't about money.
I think that feeds that too. It's that perception of what life is supposed to be like. Or
exactly.
It's like, a pastoral call plus this. I should be able to have both.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, it's situations different, but they have to navigate that for themselves to discern.
Yeah.
what is actually what God called them
So
to do.
it's a tension. You don't do ministry for money, but you also need to figure out how am I going to provide for my family.
Right.
And if the church needs to rise up and pay whoever I'm a big proponent on, the church needs to pay who they have on staff enough money. And if they pay them so low that they can't even make ends meet, then that's on them.
So before we end it here, I kind of want you to, so, obviously you said yes, the declining in one way, but you're optimistic in another. So putting your prophetic hat on, let's just say, where do you see the church at 20 years from now? Lord willing, Jesus, if he didn't come back yet, and we're still here, what do you see the American church looking like?
You're speaking about your children,
Yeah.
Michael, and my grandchildren. And I would say that, speaking prophetically, I believe that they will be the most committed and devout followers of Jesus we've ever seen in centuries. And I believe the reason for that is the unique challenges that they will have you and I can't even fathom right now, even if we're still alive by then. What I mean by that is AI, all of the technology, just that alone, technology and AI, just we can't even fathom the impact that's going to be on them and the opposition that will be for them. That we said at the beginning, it's about the gray area. There will be no gray area. They will love Jesus or they won't love Jesus. So the ones that love Jesus, it will give them the opportunity to see the power of God, the signs and wonders. So I am convinced that the church, if we're at the end of the era in 20 years, that even though it'll look different, but it'll have same principles as when the church was birthed. It will be the same kind of miraculous, incredible events of the resurrection of the church to Jesus when he comes back. So I think the obstacles and the odds will be just as great as it was when it first started. Totally two different worlds. But our people, our young people who will be adults in leadership will incredibly shine brightly. And the reason why I know that to be true is because I've been exposed to the persecuted church now around the world and see that they've survived and thrived. That's why I'm so excited about Iran right now and the miracles we've heard secondhand over the last 5-6 years happening in Iran, and now to see a theocracy hopefully overthrown, that the church could not be so brutally oppressed. To see them rise up was pretty cool. I say that to say to our next generation of leaders, I don't know what that oppression will be with technology and AI and just society as a whole and the spirit of the world, but God will give them that same spirit that he gave the persecuted church, that he gave the first century church. And so I will either be cheering from the grandstand of Hebrews 11, or I will be an old man cheering them on and hopefully being a source of encouragement to them, because I not only do I not believe it, it's a fact. We've already said that the church will look different, but it will thrive. And our young people that are just babies now are going to lead the way, and that gives me joy. They will suffer, some will die, but that'll be normal. That'll be normal. So
I like your take on it. It's optimistic, but I think like you said, I think there is that reality. There's a sifting, and like you said, the gray area is going to get thinner and thinner, and you're either all in or you're not. And we have that area to hide behind in our culture now, but it's clearly thinning that as we're moving away from the world. So that part does make me optimistic, that to know that if they're in, they're all in, and it's not even a question. So I'm optimistic with you, Mick. Let's bring it on.
Should be. You got your kids.
That's right. We're training them up. But yeah, I hope you get this episode for everybody. Kind of made you think, and kind of where you see the church at right now. And if you are a pastor kind of in that realm, hopefully this gave you some words of encouragement and some things to think about and apply in your own life. And just the confidence that, as Mick said, at the end of the day, we know we win and that the church will survive. No matter, we don't know what it looks like, but it will survive. So we hope this episode has been a blessing to you guys. Thank you so much for your continued support and watching us. And whatever platform it is, please continue to follow or subscribe. We have many great episodes coming up, so stay tuned with us. So again, we thank you. Hope you were blessed by this, and we'll see you next time here on The Devout Route. Take care.